Just nuts. Oh, and by the way, speaking of nuts, this is Christina Bobb. She's on OAN. Yeah, she's a regular host on there. She's the driving force at OAN about the election, the big lie, the election fraud horseshit. And she spoke at the ironically and hysterically named election integrity rally. Let's go integrity. Let's go integrity. That's what do we want? Integrity. When do we want it? 10 months ago when Trump was still president. Fuck this. Okay, hold on. Whoops, I pushed the wrong button. Hold on. There's going to be an ad for weightlifting or something, or like, oh, this is even worse. Do you approve? No, you're just dragging me in this. No, I'm not going to click any of those things.
One America's Christina Bobb speaks at Arizona
What? I'm sorry. Run that by me again. I have to.
One America's Christina Bobb speaks at Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake's election.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I got to say, gubernatorial is a difficult one, especially when Louis Gohmert's been around, and he likes to pronounce it gubernatorial, which, if he ever ran for governor, would be the proper term.
Integrity rally about her coverage of the state's forensic audit. Take a look.
And by the way, and by coverage, she means propaganda.
Just last week, Racine County in Wisconsin, the sheriff was the first law enforcement agency in the country to say there was fraud in 2020. That announcement.
No, he did not. I covered that whole thing. You played clips. I did the whole thing. He didn't say that. He said they suspect that there may have been some, because one lady who voted for Trump thought her grandmother shouldn't have been allowed to vote, and the staff was there to do the voting for her, and they shouldn't have been allowed to do that, and they made special accommodations because we were in a friggin' pandemic and they didn't want to kill old people, and they did that kind of stuff, and that's proof that there was fraud. Meanwhile, every time they find any fraud, it's always a fake Trump vote. Always. They always find more real Biden votes and they get rid of more fake Trump votes.
It came out, they had the pathway to do that, and they had the support to do that because of Arizona. Arizona held the line all of 2021, and you demanded an audit. You are a...
Yes, you held it in as long as you could, but then eventually you just blew a hole in your diaper and called it a day.
A bunch of crazy patriots who showed up at your legislature's homes.
Well, I take issue with the word patriot. I will give you crazy, though. See, we can find middle ground. Yes, Greg Youngkin's 17-year-old son tried to vote twice illegally.
You showed up at their homes, you marched in the streets, you said, we want an audit, and you did not stop until they gave it to you. And what
it showed was that Biden got 88 more votes, Trump lost 241 votes, and Jorgensen lost, 100 votes.
Your audit find. First and foremost, the most important thing is criminal activity took place in Arizona's election, without a doubt.
Yes, but those are all Trump votes. Prove me wrong. Because every time you found somebody that was sketchy, they voted for Trump. Every goddamn time.
Know that databases were deleted, files were missing from the election management system. We know the chain of custody was broken. We know ballots were missing from boxes. Records were not kept in accordance with the legal proceedings here.
Yeah, but enough about the audit itself.
Arizona. Crimes happened. 23,000.
No, they did not. Crimes did not happen. Well, unless you're talking about the audit itself, where they allowed the cages to be accessed by people who didn't have the right to. People took stuff out of the cages, and even though they signed it out, they didn't sign it back in. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't.
Duplicate votes, meaning the same person voted twice. That's more than double the margin of victory in Arizona.
Which, by the way, let's see. Hold on one second. If I may, one moment. Thank you very much. Um, I mean, he did it at rallies. He wasn't whispering it to people.
$9,041 more ballots were returned by a voter than the record of them actually being received. Where did those votes come from? They just appeared out of nowhere.
It's so strange. It's almost like those people went in and voted early and picked them up and filled them out and dropped them off because they were there.
The official results record does not match the record of who voted. Everything should match. It should align on either side. Who voted?
Yeah, oddly enough, some Democratic votes were thrown out that should have been counted. 88 of them specifically that the auditors found. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure they ignored them in their own right because they had Trumpies sitting at their little lazy Susan making sure they could chuck them out.
How many votes do you have? They should all tally. None of it matches across any spectrum. The Maricopa.
Yes, it does. The only time it didn't match is when the auditors didn't know what file they were supposed to be looking for the return ballots.
County's certified results do not actually match the results that were certified by the state. 12.
Right, but they are within normal human error on a minor scale.
1,772 ballots were received by Maricopa County from voters who no longer live in Maricopa County.
No, according to a commercial website. So it's like saying Facebook thinks you moved. Do you want to change? You seem to be in the mountain time zone. Would you like to change that on your phone? Oh, I guess you no longer live here.
295 voters voted in multiple counties. Duplicate ballots were missing the required serial number.
By the way, no, they did not.
And they could have been duplicated multiple times. So the actual duplicate ballot.
No. They could have nothing. Could have nothing because when they counted them, they matched the number of ballots they had. If they were counted multiple times, there would have been a bunch of them that just disappeared. Oh shit, we've got 65. This was run through a bunch of times. There was a stack of 50 ballots that went through the machine. They were counted multiple times, and therefore we have 400 votes in this area that just don't have a corresponding ballot. They all had corresponding fucking ballots.
The ballot is damaged and needs to be duplicated in order to be counted. The legal duplicate ballots, they need to have serial numbers on them so you can track them and know the original ballot. They did not have them, so you have no idea how many times those ballots
they were attached to them.
Duplicated. 208.
Nonsense. You know exactly how many because you count the duplicate and how many votes were in the area. If the duplicates were counted dozens of times, first of all, there'd be one voter on the rolls for the dozens of votes that showed up. And that's not the assertion. I mean, this is goofy. We all watched it.
4,412 ballot images were missing from the scanned ballot.
No, they were not. They were on an entirely different server under that we looked at. That one, so the 31A file versus the 31B file, because the ones that were mailed out and mailed back, the mailed back part is a certain file, and then the walked in part is a certain file. So the ones that were mailed out, someone mailed it back in, that's a file of it going out, like a 30A, shows all the ballots that were mailed out. 31A shows all the ballots that were mailed back in. 31B shows all the ballots that were walked in. And 29A is all the ones that people came in and picked up at a time before they were mailed out or before the request was made that were never mailed, but were picked up And then some of those showed up in 31A, meaning they were mailed back by the person that picked them up, and some of them returned by the person just filling them out right there. And I'm sure in one extraneous circumstance, a person took their ballot, filled it out at home, and then went, fuck it, I'll drop it off, and walked it back in. This is just stupid.
It's 284,000. We don't know where they are.
Yes, you fucking do. Even cyber ninjas admitted. They got all mad at the county because the county didn't tell them about the walk-ins. This is just stupid.
The county lacked basic security. They issued the same username and password to everybody to use to access the machines that were connected to the internet and were accessible through.
And were not they were not fucking connected to the internet. And by the way, the ones that were connected to the internet are the ones that just upload the temporary tally, the non-certified tally, so that Steve Kornacki and other people and people across the globe can check and see on what swing counties and swing districts in America are going one way or another. They don't affect the material vote. They don't affect the certified vote. It is simply the PR wing of this whole fucking thing. They keep the tally uploaded so that people can get a count of that. Those are hooked up to the internet. They're not hooked up to the machines that aren't hooked up to the internet. They're separated. And those ones that aren't hooked up to the internet are the ones that are certified. That's the count that's certified later. That's why sometimes in the one that's not hooked up directly to the machines, a human being has to look at what this one says and type it into this one because the machines aren't connected. They don't automate it. And sometimes that person makes a mistake and they put too many votes or not enough votes, and then they change it later like, oh shit, I added a 0. And then you have all these like, oh my God, Trump had like 100,000 votes and then they took it away and he only had 10,000 votes. Like, yeah, because a person looking at this went and hit 5 numbers instead of 6. You fucking dolt.
Hacking or anybody that had the generic password that they gave out to everyone. Crime.
And yet, even though that generic password existed, there is no evidence anyone got in. And if they did, they didn't change anything. One thing, like if you're going to argue that somebody hacked that shit, at least go, there was 100,000 weird votes and some teenager changed his grades and launched thermonuclear war, and bombed Las Vegas first. Shall we play a game?
Took place. And worst of all, your elected officials from Maricopa County, your Republican elected officials from Maricopa County denied you access to all of the information. They denied Arizona.
Well, now I have to say there is a good reason for that. And that's because Trump and his cronies committed massive election fraud and paid for a lot of fake votes all over the place. It turned out not to be enough. And in paying for those, hundreds of thousands of votes to try and get him over the top because he knew he was losing, all of those fake votes, now because you can't tell who those fake votes went for, he's just kind of going back because he lost and saying, we know they were fake votes. He knows they were for him, but we all know that no one can tell after the fact, so they can go back and claim fraud because it was their fraud. It just wasn't enough fraud for him to win. So thank you. I have to put that up because in case I get in trouble. P.S. Prove me wrong. Hashtag there is no Hunter Biden laptop.
Voters the truth. They denied them the opportunity to see what happened in the Splunk logs and the passwords.
And yeah, but if the problem is that if they show them, it'll show them that the Republicans cheated and Trump lost by a lot, and they'll get all demoralized and probably try to start another civil war. I'm just saying.
The administrative passwords to the machines. They obscured the truth and gave you no transparency into your election. We are a nation of laws.
Yeah, there's limited transparency. Nobody gets to see the fucking code or the passwords or any of that shit. I don't need to know how my neighbor voted. It's a private voting thing. We know people are registered. We don't have the right to know, even technically speaking. I mean, it's listed, but it's mainly so you can check it for against fraud later. It's made public, but it's not an intrinsic right. You don't need to. I don't have an intrinsic right to know you are registered to vote or not. It's none of my goddamn business.
We like laws. We like law and order. We don't always like being held accountable.
What? Wait, I'm sorry. What was that again? We like laws. We like law and order. And then what?
We are a nation of laws. We like laws. We like law and order. We don't always like being held accountable, but we like it when our elected officials.
What? We don't always like being held accountable? Gee, you don't fucking say. You don't like being held accountable? That's odd. I don't know where you would ever get the idea that people don't like being held accountable for when they break the fucking law. What?
Held accountable, and they have not been held accountable. The people of Arizona.
Well, like I said, you don't want them held accountable. Republicans don't. Because if people are aware of the massive cheating that the Republicans had to do to even lose by the amount they lost by, and keep the Georgia votes close, they they'd be under so much legal scrutiny that half of the Republican congressional delegation would be in jail, and everybody would recognize that Trump, probably lost by 30 million votes.
Expect their leaders to follow the law. Attorney General Brnovich was elected for the responsibility of enforcing the laws in Arizona. So, to Attorney General Brnovich, I say, the nation is watching. The world is watching.
Yes, and thanks for doing your job, even though we didn't trust you to do it because you were obviously the voters wanted you to be some sort of political stooge for Donald Trump, and you just couldn't bring yourself to do it. Weird. Do you and Brett Kavanaugh talk? Do you just cry over a beer or what?
More importantly, the people of Arizona are watching. The people who elected you.
Well, how do you know they elected him? I mean, honestly. If you can't trust the elections, how do you know that person, how do you know they weren't a deep state operative put in office by the Clinton, as some sort of Clinton murder hit squad? Why in the world would you think that Donald Trump wasn't legally elected, but this person was? What could possibly...
And we expect Attorney General Brnovich to do a real investigation and issue real arrest warrants and issue real subpoenas.
Yeah, I guarantee they are every single day. Just about other shit. Like real crimes. You know there are real crimes going on in Arizona, right?
Do a real job. Yeah. And lastly, I'll address the Arizona State Legislature.
Yes, please do. How do we even know they were elected? I know they're Republicans, but how do we know these rhinos didn't just steal their way into this, huh? How come we don't know that they are just secret Democrats?
Some we've heard from tonight. Some of you are warriors. Some of you are absolute warriors, and I have enjoyed getting to know you.
Yes, everyone seems very worried.
Over the last year, as you've fought and you've raised your voices and you've made your voices known and you have represented the people who elected you to do the job. And I'm thankful for you. I am thankful for the warriors in your Senate and in your House. To your quieter colleagues, I say, find your voice. What good is an elected seat if you can't summon the courage to do your job?
Well, the issue isn't that they're not doing their job right now. It's they're afraid that you're going to find out and others are going to find out that they didn't do their job last year and that they tried to steal the election for Donald Trump, and they just don't want you to look. They're hoping they can just sneak away, having just stolen the whole thing, and
You were all elected for a purpose, and that purpose was to represent the people of Arizona, and they have made their voices loud. And we need you to do.
Made their voices loud. It's okay. We're going to let it slide. It's not like she talks for a living.
What you were elected to do, what we all know needs to happen, and you need to decertify the 2020 election. Thank you.
Want to see more?
Yeah. No one wants to see more of that. It's friggin' ridiculous.